Hey, I'm Mindy Kinnis. This is the Daily Rage. Let's take a look at what happened this week and see if we can predict where these might go in the future. Now, this is a perfect example of what we were talking about last week. Somebody asked me about posting both high and low targets, and that is because these things can turn around at any given point. And what's cool about this situation is that because we know that support can become resistance and resistance can become support, this would have worked out for you in both directions. So this was Monday. Monday, we took out. So again, I set these targets last Friday. Monday, we took out target one to the high side. Then on Tuesday, we took out target two. Yay. And then just rocketed up from there. Now, because I don't update these more than once a week, these are still from last week. But as you can see, we did turn around on Thursday, yesterday, and then today, flip that parabolic SAR, further indicating like, hey, we are going down. But what's cool is that, like I said, because support becomes resistance and resistance becomes support, you could have used these same targets as then support, in other words, like a lower target, and made money to the downside in this case. All of that being said, let's get these cleaned up for this coming week. So now what we're going to do is we're going to shift this to here. These will be our high side targets now. Again, if it gets itself turned around and gets going to the high side, target one would be 41,003 near the high of today. Target two would be 41,687. As for the low side, let's make this pretty easy. Let's just come right up to here as target one, and then this will be target two. So that is the Dow or the micro Dow futures. Let's take a look at the micro S&P. Now, in this case, we didn't even get to these. As we know, a lot of rotation was happening out of tech and some of the, big names, and the Nasdaq and the S&P were pretty much the first to like shift, right? It started on that, and then everything else today just could not keep up. So, in this case, we can bring this down, actually way down. We did take out those two targets to the low side. Yay. So let's bring these higher targets lower. And this will be your next target. Target one, then to the low side. Target two will be right there. So again, we're always going to just fence in where is our price action. And I'm going to give you two targets to the high side, two targets to the low side. And some weeks, they all will work out. Which is extra awesome. Okay, like I was saying, NASDAQ was one of the first to kind of sell off, and you can see it's just looking real rough over here. So we clearly took out these low targets. So let's get them moved down. Wow, we even busted through that level of support, which was pretty significant. There was a lot going on here, here, here. So we are already lower than that. Let's take our next target there. Next target down here. And another way to think about this is wherever, on whichever day it's heading toward the cloud, it may go all the way down to the cloud and bounce off of the top of the cloud. So be paying attention as that gets closer, because now that we're below the turning line and the standard line, it's like, there's not really much in there. And we already passed this support. So really, the cloud is going to be the next like big point of support. As for the high side, these are fairly optimistic at this point. So let's just bring these down a bit. And those will be your new targets to the high side. Again, that will be irrelevant if these continue to go lower. Just focus on these guys down here. Moving on to the M2K, this is the micro Russell. It had such a solid, beautiful start to this little rally, like getting up and out of this big box of chop, and then just couldn't sustain it. As the rest of the market was selling off, it definitely did as well. But again, we did take out those two targets to the high side. So yes, these may be a little bit delayed because I go through all these markets only once a week, but they still work. And oh boy, look at where we kind of bounced off of today. Again, support, well, in this case, resistance becoming support. That is the exact line from last week that was based on this candle way back here. And that's essentially where we caught it and we're able to bounce a little bit from that level. So let's do this. Let's bring this up high here. Let's bring this. Let's just keep it with today's high because who knows what will happen next week. It might just get itself turned around. We'll use approximately that turning line as level 1, and for level 2, we'll go right about there. Now, this one has not yet crossed the turning line and the standard line, so big, big, big area of support. If it does pass through the turning line and the standard line, the next level then, other than this support, there's literally not much in there. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff in here, but all the way back down to the cloud then. So pay attention when it's in that zone. Moving on to the cryptos, there wasn't a whole lot green on my radar screen today, but that looks like Bitcoin had a pretty decent day. This one happens to be the micro futures contract, but you could trade either of them depending on your margins and also how much risk you care to take on. Anyway, we did take out those targets, so that looks really great. Kind of gapped up on that day. So that was a nice little boost to those markets. These will be your next two. Well, that one is real close. Let's just go up to the next level here. We'll call that target 2. This will be target 1 to the high side again. It is right now stuck in the cloud, so it will need to work its way the rest of the way through that cloud. Thankfully, it's not too thick at that point. So then we would head toward 71,032. As for the low side, let's bring these up, bring this up, and we will just see what happens from there next week. Looking at ETH or micro ETH futures, we also took out those targets as we just rocketed. Big gap situation right there, which is great. So we are almost out of the cloud, but let's go up to that for target 1. This will be target 2, and then of course followed by, some of the tops of this area around here. If you wanted a third target, as for the low side, that looks pretty nice. Little shelf action there, and we'll go there. That top of that gap right there. This one is the 10-year micro yield. And as I mentioned, it's always the opposite of what's going on the 10-year note. The reason you're going to want to use the 10-year note for your charting is you're going to get a lot more data. Those little micro yields are only monthly contracts, so you just don't have as much information on the charts. For instance, like an Ichimoku cloud and all of that stuff. So we did pull back today, although not terribly. This would be kind of that next level of support. It actually stopped prior to that and recovered just a teensy little bit. But what we can see is that this was down for the last 2 days, which means this was up. These, instead of being a regular micro, these are the opposite because this is the actual yield. Moving on to gold, only down 73.5 at this recording. OMG. Okay, so gold just fell off the world. That being said, earlier in the week, we did take out these high targets. So again, like this is the beauty of just having some semblance of an idea of where we might go is you can set your targets for those things and take the profit, hopefully before something like this happens when it just completely falls off of the world. So we are way down here at this point. We were basically like caught by this standard line. So high side, let's bring this down approximately to that turning line. And let's use this, see if it can fill that gap back up to the high side. That's pretty nasty. Let's see, that's pretty darn close. Let's just use about the top of the cloud-ish. It's going to depend on how quickly it gets there. Like if it just drops on Monday, that might be a slightly lower point where it actually hits the cloud. But for now, we can call that an approximation. This one can stay as target 2 to the short side. But ouch, that looks terrible. Oh, I spoke too soon. Oh my gosh. Okay, this one looks way worse. Ooh, let's see. Okay, yeah, and that's true because gold is only down 2.99%, silver is down 4.28, and then copper is 4.25. Ouch. All right, so this actually like huge gap down, dropped out of the cloud to the low side, recovered a bit. Man, that is just nasty. Okay, from down here where this kind of touched down and then bounced off, that's going to be a really nice level of support, potentially. At least it's going to be target 1 for us. Target 2 will be right here based on this little touchdown and bounce. What's cool when that happens is that it has some nice momentum from bouncing off of that area or out of that area. So this came down, touched, bounced, like huge rally from that. And same thing here, came down, touched, bounced, and then a pretty nice move up. Okay, this, goodness, this is just horrendous. Okay, we're going to go for filling that gap to the high side. And then we're going to go right here. That would be target 2 to the high side, but it's looking pretty gnarly right now. This one is micro copper. This one actually looks the worst of all of them. Why? Because it's way below the cloud. Didn't have such a strong gap down, but still looking real bad. So let's see, where do we go from here? All right, I'm going to grab both of those wicks. So this area right in here, that will be target 1 to the low side or the short side. Next level down, we'll go for here. And then if you wanted a third, that would be around 3.98. As for the high side, clearly that's like way, we're not even close to that. I'm just going to fence that right in on the top because if it can recover what it sold off today, and then make a new high on Monday or into next week, that would be target 1. And let's just bring this all the way down to here as target 2. Finally, wrapping up with micro crude. This one is terrible too. 4.29% down at this recording. Ouch. All right. Well, we were just kind of chopping, and now we've gotten back to some of these lower levels of this. You can see some of these wicks almost came down to about that same level. So pretty nice support in that vicinity, sort of where we wrapped up today. So where we will go from here, let's go down to this next point and then down to I'll grab all those wicks right in here. As always, it's never about this exact number like 76.17. If it gets in that vicinity, you need to start paying attention. As for the high side, we can bring this down because that's just one big old candle from today. And then this will be target 2 to the high side. Once again, only if it gets itself turned around. Although at this point, we flipped the parabolic SIR today, huge red candle, went through the turning line and the standard line. So we're looking toward this top of the cloud and seeing if that can hold it. I'm Mindy Kinnis. Thanks so much for watching.